All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and our goal is definitely to end on time. So right now you should be seeing the presentation, and so this webinar is brought to you by IDRA. IDRA is a nonprofit, independent organization that fights for educational opportunity for every child through strong public schools. We do this through teacher and student support. So student support means we have different programs that students can participate in, like our Vision Coders program or our Valued Youth Partnership program. We also do teacher professional development. So if you guys have any professional development needs, let us know. We'd be more than happy to assist you. We do technology training, we do equity training, just, we have so many opportunities for educators, and these webinars are just a part of that. We also do our policy, legal analysis, and advocacy. So we have a team of lawyers on board that work to fight for educational justice, and whatever that looks like. We have our research and data analysis team. So it's in the name. We are the Intercultural Development Research Association. So if you have research needs, please come to us. And then also our family and community engagement. And that looks like our Mexican American Studies student and parent groups, and our cafes, our education cafes, which are parent-led organizations that work with that we train you how to work with the school board, how to advocate for your students. And so it's just a really nice opportunity to get family and community engaged in the educational system. We are also, this webinar is also brought to you by the Digital Inclusion Alliance of San Antonio. The Digital Inclusion Alliance of San Antonio is an organization, a grassroots organization that is committed to bridging the digital divide in San Antonio and within the Rio Grande Valley. We are working to train the community on the issue as well as digital skills. And we also work with industry and city public leaders to try to bridge the digital divide. I'll pass it off to Christina, and she'll talk a little bit about what Digital Inclusion Week is and what the goals are.
Thanks, Michelle. We first just want to extend a really special thank you to everyone here on the call for helping us celebrate Digital Inclusion Week. It's an annual week of awareness, recognition, and celebration of digital inclusion in our communities. And so for DIW 23, DIASA is hosting 2 virtual discussions and educational events today, highlighting leaders in our ecosystem, elevating the critical work happening across San Antonio. So if you are looking for something to do this afternoon during lunch at 12:30, we will be hosting our second webinar about IA empowering people with disabilities. This year, DIASA is exploring how artificial intelligence can be leveraged to connect our communities and help us design innovative solutions for broadening access to affordable internet, devices, and digital skills program. And so digital inclusion is critical, as we know, for advancing educational equity, ensuring that every learner, regardless of their identity and background, is granted equal access to the wealth of knowledge and opportunities available online. So thus our partnership with IDRA for today's webinar. IDRA has a very rich history of researching and being involved in advancing digital equity and inclusion and bridging the homework gap. But by bridging the digital divide, we're not only empowering individuals with the tools and resources necessary for thriving and essential for learning, but in cultivating an environment where every student has the opportunity to thrive and innovate in an increasingly digital world. So with that, I'll pass it over to Michelle for more formal introductions of our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for your time. And we're excited to talk more about AI and education.
All right, so we are joined by Manuel Urbina, who is an educator with SAISD at a bilingual campus. He is a second grade teacher. He'll give you a little bit more of his introduction in a moment. We're also joined by Dr. Lizdelia Piñón, who's an education associate at IDRA. And again, she will introduce herself a little bit more. And then we have a recording from our Director of Operations, Hector Bojorquez. He is not able to join us today, but we still asked him the questions and he still gave us answers. So we will definitely be sharing that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then I am going to pin our illustrious panel so that we just see their video. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And while I'm doing that, if Manny, if you would like to introduce yourself and tell the group a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Again, my name is Manuel Urbina. And currently I'm in first grade. Usually I will be in a different grade, but this year I'm doing first grade, and it is in a dual language setting at Mark Twain Dual Language Academy. We are a A-rated campus. I've been in the profession for 10 years. And I'm just excited to kind of maybe share some of the things that I'm using, some of the AI tools that I'm using, and what specifically I'm using it for. I can definitely speak to how I'm using it with how I create lesson plans. So, as a teacher, as an elementary teacher, we're told to lesson plan for 5 core subjects, and each one is like 45 minutes or longer. So time is of the essence. And definitely these tools that we're going to talk about today really do support and alleviate some of the things that we do as teachers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Piñón, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little.
Hi, I'm Liz Piñón, and I was an educator for about 10 years and have taught from pre-K to college students at Texas Christian University, all different arenas. And I'm super excited to talk about AI. I think the most important reason is that time-saving aspect, right? It saves so much time with busy work that then we can just hands in and get to doing the real work that as educators we love to do, right? Work with our students. So I'm so excited to talk about this intersection today, especially about how it affects emergent bilinguals and SPED student and the powerful tool that they can become. So
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Christina, we'll start with the first question. Take it away.
Awesome. Okay, we're really excited. Okay, so this first question is for Mr. Urbina. Okay, so you alluded a little bit to how you've been using AI for your lesson plan development. So can you tell us a little bit more about how AI tools have improved your teaching practices or your preparation for classes?
Yeah, definitely speaking to just lesson planning. Um, it's basically just having a conversation. I use ChatGPT, and it's just like really having a conversation with that tool and kind of just letting it know who you are. So, for example, I'll say, "Hey, I'm a first grade teacher. My audience is first graders." Or you can type in their age. In my case, it would be 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. You want to tell it what like the goals are, or the objectives. What do you want to accomplish? So, for example, like this week, we're covering main idea. You can type in the TEAC 1.29D, a main idea. You want to create a lesson that's, just for time management purposes. You can kind of even give it, how long is the lesson gonna last? Is it gonna be 45 minutes? Is it 60 minutes? How many days? Is it a 4-week day? Is it all 5 days? How long do you want the lesson to kind of last? So it's really just a conversation like with ChatGPT and kind of just inputting those details in the beginning. I think when we have to collaborate with adults, we do that already with other teachers here in the school setting. Teachers have to collaborate with other teachers to create lessons that are going to be relevant rigorous, and also engaging. So you can do that. You can do that with ChatGPT by just inputting that information. Of course, you do need to know your students really well. You do need to know their strengths and opportunities to add that information. Because sometimes you may need to differentiate for specific students. So it's a nice balance. You definitely need to know your students, but at the same time, you can use these AI tools to create these really excellent lessons. I can definitely speak to more of like the details a little bit after, but it's again, it's really just like a conversation, just like how you would collaborate with another adult.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And feel free to like add any more about kind of your experience working with ChatGPT specifically about the development of these lesson plans, because I think that those on the call have kind of like a diverse exposure to chat. So maybe you can kind of go into some detail if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. Here in my campus, we kind of have to get together as adults and collaborate and create lessons, especially for, reading and writing in English and in Spanish. So one of the challenges is always like, we have to find a good book. So for example, this month we're going over informative text, nonfiction. So what's a good book to kind of teach main idea with? So, you can type that into ChatGPT, and it can help you select a good book with strong academic vocabulary. You can have it provide questions that you can ask during your lesson. You can also have it here. Yeah, you can also have it because again, one thing is just really knowing your audience. So I think you do want to tell it to be specific to the age. That way students are kind of understanding what's being asked of them. So again, it does help you. It does provide like tools like the books. Maybe if you don't have enough time to like read the whole entire book, you can ask it to summarize the book for you in 3 to 4 bullet points. All of those little things will save you time. You can ask it to provide a brief summary or in 3 sentences. Tell me what this book is all about. What are some possible misconceptions that the students may have during the lesson in understanding, for example, main idea. So it will provide all those things as long as you're asking those questions. So I think the tool is as smart as its user. So if you're asking good questions, it's going to provide some really good information.
And Manuel,
yes.
another thing, can I jump in?
Yes, please.
I love how you can differentiate for our English language learners. Let's say you have a newcomer. We're working on this lesson. Can you help me differentiate this lesson for a student who comes in at level 3 in reading or writing? And it breaks it down and it gives you examples. It helps someone who's a brand new teacher, maybe has never worked with English language learners, or even like a seasoned teacher, right? It saves us time. I've done PDs where we've gathered and all we've worked on is let's work on sentence stems differentiated by language level, English language levels. And we've used ChatGPT to help generate some of this information that maybe would have taken us like hours. But this helps us save time and help even new teachers feel confident in working with those students.
Right. For example, this year I have, more than half my class are true monolinguals learning to speak Spanish. Sometimes we'll have it like the other way. But so yeah, definitely it's helped me create lessons where not only do I have those true monolinguals, like just listening and just reading in Spanish or speaking in Spanish, but I have them also, I've created lessons where I also have them kind of like writing in Spanish, which is more of a difficult thing to do at their age, especially if they're learning that second language. So yeah, definitely it helps you create those lessons where kids are listening, reading, writing, and also speaking that second language.
That's actually really a great segue to the second question that I wanted to pose to Dr. Piñón. So thank you so much for this really great conversation so far. So Dr. Piñón, how can AI help personalize learning experiences for students with different learning styles, backgrounds, or abilities?
So I'm super happy because IDRA has just spent about 6 months working on the new bilingual special ed standard certificate for teachers that's currently in draft form in Texas. And one of the pieces that we put in there was to be able to use technology, especially with our students. So here we have that intersection of emergent bilingual and a special ed student, and being able to use that technology to help them, learn, improve, learn their language, improve whatever skill they're working on. And AI technology is going to make a huge difference in the lives of these specific populations. We've worked with the schools and we've been able to share AI tools that allows even a new teacher to understand our students. The digital landscape has a lot of great tools. Before, I would tell people, do not use like Google Translate and just call it a day. But AI has helped move a lot of these language tools that we use even for translation with our families and our parents light years. A lot of the things I'm able to translate or have translate is almost like 95% accurate. And if a principal needs like even a quick letter or a teacher needs a quick translation to a student, it's wonderful to have that tool right at your hands and be able to use it. You might be able to use AI tools to help, students who maybe they're nonverbal. Maybe you need to use images. AI tools can help generate visuals to help you with that specific student. Or if you suddenly have a student who arrived who speaks Haitian Creole, I'm going to be able to give him whatever prompt we're working at in his or her language. That in itself is so powerful in the language learning for our students, or if if they're learning differently.
Thank you so much, Dr. Piñón. There's kind of a follow-up question that we wanted to ask, because you mentioned a few of them, but I didn't know if there are any other specific technologies that you wanted to highlight. So are there any emerging AI tools, technologies you believe are going to have a significant impact on emergent bilingual students or students with diverse abilities that we can introduce to our community members here?
So I'll share a couple of my favorite AI tools for emergent bilinguals and then a couple for our SPED students. And I also want to share that I am a mom of bilingual special ed triplets. So I also bring a different lens as a mom of how powerful these tools are going to be for their future. But my favorite by far, and Manuel, I'm with you on this. I love ChatGPT. It's my new Google. I use it even for writing a quick note. But for emergent bilinguals, I love the feature of ChatGPT that Manuel had mentioned, that you can have a conversation with the computer, with the ChatGPT, at whatever level I'm at, right? I could input for the student, this is a newcomer who only speaks Spanish, and we're working on writing a narrative. Can you help this student develop that, right? And it'll walk them through the prompts. In whatever language you can choose. You can add extensions to your Chrome so that it could record and answer back. which is my favorite feature, to add the microphone that answers and speaks to the person at the chat GPT. It helps you correcting mistakes in real time. It's one of my favorites. Another one in English language learners is Duolingo, right? And Duolingo's been around for a while, but I love how it helps with the fluency development because it continues to have students repeat sentences, which helps our students in their fluency in various contexts, right? It lets you talk in, different arena and content areas. And then the third one is, I don't know, I have a bunch that I really like, but I guess a third one would be Glossica. And Glossica is a new one that I've been playing with, and it also helps with that fluency. It helps students, it gives them a large library of sentences so they can hear native speakers. So it's not only a computer, but they're hearing native speakers that sound like them repeat the sentences. Oh, and I forgot, in regards to Duolingo, I love the gamifying, right? Because one of the things I love about AI is the gamification of language learning. We all know from research that gamifying a game, Ladson Billings talks a lot about this, just, makes it so much more understandable to all our students. And that feature in Duolingo is so powerful. I'll give you a few in special ed and then I'll move on. One of my favorites for special ed is Magic School AI. And it's by far one of my favorites for teachers and for the students. It helps students write at their level. It's very intuitive. It continues to raise the level of difficulty when they're working on something. On the other side, I love how it helps teachers create really good IEP goals, accommodations, modifications, and nothing's perfect. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but it's such powerful tools, especially for maybe new teachers or teachers that might not have worked with these specific populations in the past.
Thank you so much. That's like a plethora of resources, and you are perfectly connecting us to those for harnessing in our use in our classroom or in our research. So thank you so much, Dr. Piñón. We'll go ahead and bump right over to Mr. Urbina with another question. So Liz just gave an amazing amount of resources that teachers can try to leverage in their own classroom. But the question is really about some practical tips and tricks for teachers who maybe are new to implementing AI, but who want to harness the power of it to either enhance their teaching practices or improve student outcomes.
Yeah, it's really just around playing around with it. I remember playing around with it one evening with my fiance. We were just kind of curious to see what it could do. As a teacher, I was already hearing a lot of good talk about ChatGPT, so we put it to use, and it was really just a conversation, and it was really easy. And I think what got me hooked immediately, I think any bilingual educator will ask, does that come in Spanish? Or, and it did, like it translated everything. And again, it's a very easy tool to use. You ask questions, you input the information, and it just produces what you need. And if it's not producing what you need, maybe you're just not asking the right questions. So again, you could do this with someone else. So it could be, it's really fun. You could do this by yourself, or you could do it with someone else to create lessons. And again, if you're a new teacher, it's hard to find good resources, and definitely ChatGPT is a good resource to help you lesson plan. You can shoot off the hip, but that's not going to be the best way to deliver instruction to the kiddos. Definitely come prepared, come with a good plan. And definitely I would recommend ChatGPT to create those lesson plans.
Thank you so much. And thank you to my panelists here for sharing this space to be part of this conversation. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Michelle.
So Christina is now becoming a panelist. So the question that I have is for both Christina and Liz. And so we'll start with Christina and then Liz can answer. But how can AI assist with overcoming challenges or limitations when conducting educational research?
Yeah, this is actually a really fun question to talk about because for those of you who are on the call, IDRA actually hosted our first ever AI Academy earlier this year, and we were very new to the AI space, specifically as it's connected to our own research here in-house. And so a lot of our conversations beforehand were thinking about the ethical considerations of leveraging AI in the use of our research. And our third panelist, who's going to be asynchronous here in a bit, will kind of explore those ideas. But I think in a broad sense, I think AI is really useful in helping us to think about broad themes with respect to some of the experiences our school leaders or educators or students are having in their schools. One of the ways we've implemented AI specifically here at IDRA is helping us to perform qualitative analyses. Of course, there's numerous measures we take in order to preserve privacy, anonymity, confidentiality, and what have you. But using it in such a way that helps us to identify really key concerns or target concerns that our stakeholders have when it comes to trying to advance education equity in their campus or in their district. And so that's been a really great way we've been using it, is to help us to analyze this really immense amount of data with so many discrepancies across campuses and districts that have their unique target audiences that they're working with. So that's been one huge way that we've implemented AI to assist in our education research. But I'm sure Dr. Piñón will have some great ideas that I could also bounce off of. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Piñón.
You've talked about some of them, which I love. That's your specialty. That's your wheelhouse. But I also love how it does I think one of my favorite features is that multimodal data collection. I love that you're able to use microphones, typing, even cameras. Some AI are able to record, a student maybe who might have a speech impediment and be able to understand what they're trying to express, which helps us in that special education realm. Where we have different students, but even with language, right? Someone speaking in one language and then the instructor, the educator, listening to it in their language that they understand, or their mode of language that they understand, is one of my favorites. I think in regards to limitations, in this research field, would be making sure that we are addressing the bias, right? We all come with bias when we are maybe researching or working on something. I feel that if I'm working with even ChatGPT, I'm going to let it know my bias from the beginning. I have this bias. What are areas that I can do that can help assist and identify those biases when I'm looking for research, when I'm looking at methodology, that just humanly I might overlook.
Yeah, that's a definitely important concern to think about, the bias that's introduced by the user, but also the machine itself. As we know, AI tools are designed with algorithms, and a lot of these algorithms do institute bias in its design. So it's a really important limitation, I think, to implementing AI. But again, there's really great ways to mitigate those impacts, specifically for educators. And I'm really happy that Michelle dropped the Padlet of resources there for you. There's a research specific presentation that we used during the AI Academy that I invite you to look at. But some of the tips that are specifically geared towards educators is to kind of encourage students or even your colleagues to think about how AI can be used to explicitly respond to some of the main concerns that might show up in the classroom. For example, plagiarism is a big one. And I think at this point we're pretty familiar with ChatGPT, especially students. And so just kind of having a conversation about the design of ChatGPT, kind of its own shortcomings and how you can responsibly use it in the work that you do as a student is a really important conversation to have, because I think it opens up kind of this more friendly approach to implementing AI versus being so afraid of it or being so against its really important and powerful uses. So I think that's one tip that I can encourage educators or anybody who works with young people that also are interested in using AI.
So that's a good segue, Christina. Thank you. I want to actually pose the next two questions to all of y'all. Okay, so the first one, we'll start with Manny, and then Manny can pass it off to Liz or Christina. But what are some of the key ethical considerations that you as an educator should keep in mind when implementing AI? And Liz kind of already talked about it a little bit. You know, it's like, do you already have a bias, and should you write that in there? Right. And so again, just kind of think about what are the key ethical considerations, and I know it's a kind of a vague question, but think about it in respect to how you're using it with your students, how you're using it to create lessons, and so like I said, we'll start with Manny.
Yes, so I teach first grade, so basically I really just do use it to create those lessons. Sometimes I will create them by myself or with other colleagues, but it's just really you're coming up with your own questions. You're trying to create your own structure for these lessons, and these lessons are going to be more tailored towards your students, your audience. So I don't see where there is a problem with that in my grade level, but I could see where that could be a topic of consideration in the upper grades.
Okay, Liz?
And I'll also jump in. I think it's also just having that transparency, right? Understanding AI, that we're using it, why we're using it, understanding how that system works. It's not some kukui, right? Like, it's not some scary thing that we really need to keep our students, especially our marginalized students, like that might be our SPED kids or our kids who are emergent bilinguals, at the forefront of technology and learning. It gives them accessibility. For our special ed students, you're giving them a tool that they didn't have before, because by including these disabilities or these students with different backgrounds, we're giving them equal access to these AI enhanced learning. That's so important for kids. I think another thing to be mindful is when implementing AI is this depersonalization, right? We have to be mindful that while AI can tailor lessons, right? I have ABC students. I'm tailoring this for A, this for B, this for C. We still need to remember that human element of teaching and mentorship is invaluable, right? ChatGPT can write the most perfect lesson, right? But the mix is Manny, right? It's the teacher. Nothing else. Nothing can take that away. That connection with the person and the student. So.
Yeah, and I'll just support the ideas that both Urbina and Dr. Piñón are expressing. I think, this can extend also to the educators or the adults using the AI tool themselves. Thinking about the way you're engaging with the tool, and knowing that you're the one with the original ideas, you're using the AI tool to help prompt the expansion of those ideas. And I think that's an important concept to also introduce to young people interested in using these technologies, or using this technology for their own learning. And so, again, I would just encourage any adult or educator who is interested in implementing these tools in their professional work, to have those transparent conversations, and think a little bit more deeply about how we are using AI to just expand our work. So yeah, I'll just want to uplift what our other panelists have shared.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And so then the last question before we move into Q&A, is what advice do you have for educators who are interested in integrating AI tools into their classroom, but may be hesitant or unsure on where to start? So we all know that it can feel a little daunting, right, to get in there and start working on it. What advice do you guys have to implement AI into your work or into your classroom? And we'll start with Liz.
So let's say you're an educator working with emergent bilinguals, and all of a sudden you got a group of newcomers. Maybe what you want to do is start small. I want to implement one small AI tool to work with this specific set of students. Or maybe I want to work on grading. Maybe their grade scope is another great tool that you can use to help you. Whatever it is, I always suggest start small, get a colleague, get a friend to talk about it. My greatest experience was working with the amazing Michelle and the amazing Christina during the summer. And we did so much learning during that summer, working on playing with different AI tools. So maybe start small, maybe start with 1 or 2 AI tools, grab a partner, make sure they're user friendly. I'm keeping a table of all the AI tools I'm using, and I'm writing notes, my pros and cons, right? And I'm highlighting what I like best of each. I think make sure I'm reflecting also, because I used the tool, I didn't quite like it, making sure I'm writing my own notes, and then stay updated every single day. There's like 3 or 4 more new tools that I didn't know about. Playing with them, take time, reading different articles that are out there about, the pros and cons. But I think the most important is to that human element that we all always need. It's great, but that human touch is always irreplaceable.
Thank you so much, Liz. And I'd like to get my hands on that list, by the way. Manny, if you'd like to go.
I'm really enjoying what Ms. Piñón just mentioned. Yeah, definitely the human element is so important. You have to know your students. I think you want to start there. You want to come prepared and deliver engaging and rigorous lessons. Definitely the AI tools are there. And I mean, it's just echo, right? Grab somebody and practice that with that person, because it's a form of collaboration, just with thinking resource. So I think it's also important to have a plan in place. Like, what is it that I want to teach? Like, already come prepared with those questions. And if not, those questions will come as you're creating the lesson.
Christina?
Sure. So I'll kind of speak from the perspective of a researcher. I don't have a lot of experience being in the classroom, so I definitely look to those who have, to share kind of more explicit pieces of advice. But I think from the researcher perspective, I think what Dr. Piñón and Mr. Urbina are sharing about knowing your students, knowing who your audience is, that's trusting your gut and trusting your intuition about what you do know from the professional standpoint. And I think in research, right, we have to regard this as a tool, not a replacement of the work that we know how to do. And so I think it's important to, for me, understand the mechanics behind a tool before I implement it. And so if you're someone who is a little bit unsure about a particular tool, I think a great way to demystify its capabilities or what it's about is by learning about how it actually works. And I think that's been really helpful for me in my kind of introduction to AI, is learning how these things work, learning how algorithms happen, how bias is introduced in these algorithms, because then it helps me, again, be a little bit more prepared when I'm going in with my questions that I want to implement during my incremental prompting process, like Mr. Urbina was talking about when he's using ChatGPT for his lesson plan development. There's a process to it. There's kind of like some scaffolding that happens, like you're setting the scene for the results to be outputted. So I think that's something that I would encourage everyone to do, is trying to learn the back end or like the mechanics of the tool, so that you have so you're sharper when you're using it.
So thank you. And then I'll just kind of add a little bit of my perspective on this. Don't be afraid. You're not going to break the AI. You're not going to break ChatGPT. You're not going to break CurryPod. Get in there, get your hands dirty and play. And what you'll notice, and Mr. Urbina kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, is as you're interacting with ChatGPT, you'll notice, like in the search bar, you'll put in your first criteria, whatever it is, your first prompt. And then you can refine on that prompt. So you can write in a prompt that says something like, write a lesson plan on the water cycle for first grade students in a particular tone for a particular amount of time using the following TEKs, right? So that's a pretty comprehensive prompt. But the next thing you can do is then say, like Dr. Piñón mentioned, is that you can go into the prompt bar and then say, now rewrite this lesson in Spanish. Now rewrite this lesson in another language. You can also ask it to refine the TEKs. Or if you don't know the TEKs and you want to ask the prompt, you can ask ChatGPT, what TEKs did you use to create this lesson? So again, go in there, ask it questions, get a colleague that's going to help you refine the prompt. But again, you're not going to break it. And if you're worried about being an expert, don't worry about being an expert in AI. It's an emerging field. It's an emerging technology. We're all learning at the same time. No one is truly an expert unless they're actually writing the AI. AI is not a robot or a sentient being that's all on its own. It is a person, or people, I should say. It's not one person, but it's people that are writing and training machines to interact with us. So, demystify it a little, especially with your students.
My name is Hector Bojorquez. I'm Director of Operations at IDRA. There's several things that we need to be careful of. One of the very first things is obviously students using it to circumvent doing some of the work themselves. That's one of the primary things that everybody's concerned with, and it's a valid concern, and it is a concern that should be impressed upon the students as an ethical issue from the very beginning. Having said that, I think it should not be the overriding issue, the overriding ethical concern that we have when we're looking at the use of AI in education. I think some of the really truly difficult ethical concerns have to do with privacy issues for a couple of reasons. If we start with the way students are used to using social media, Students are used to using social media in such a way where it feels like they're very comfortable in basically showing quite a bit of their lives on social media. They can take it down. They can, if it's something that they don't want to have up there, they can take it down. Theoretically, anything that goes on the internet is always on there, but you can still take it down. But there are with artificial intelligence, there's a couple of other concerns. When you're using a tool such as ChatGPT, anything you put in there, any questions you ask, say that you start asking about specific topics, or you feed it certain information, unless told otherwise, all of that can stay within ChatGPT's servers as part of what they use to continue to train the model. And that means that they're consistently training using information that you fed it. And so if you stop and think about that, if you start training it using, around, let's say, things around about a certain school or about a certain individual, all that information that you're inputting on there, it continues to use that. So if somebody else asks a question about, say, that particular school or a particular individual, theoretically, it can come back and use the information that you used, that you fed the model. That's really problematic because students are used to saying and just using a lot of information in chats, in postings, in their TikToks, and like I said, in those cases, they're theoretically always up there. But there's something a little bit more insidious here about it staying within that model for an indefinite period of time to where other people can query it. And I think that's an ethical concern that we need to think about and that we need to impress upon students. And it's ethical in many ways. One, for students, it's a privacy issue for them, but it's also a concern if teachers or if schools start using ChatGPT and including either student information, they may not be doing it, we know, thinking that this is a huge problem, or anything that is attached to themselves or the schools. It's that's a very problematic. With ChatGPT, they realized early on that this was going to be an issue. So in that case, if you have the paid version, you can tell it not to store it on their servers. So that's their solution, their current solution. But I think it's something to always be looking out for, the particular problem. Other ethical concerns have to do with copyright issues around art and images. Those are very serious concerns that I don't think we've worked out quite as much. There is Midjourney. There is some of the Midjourney is one of the larger ones that people are using right now, but there's several other image art AI generators that will, basically create an image once you ask it information. Ask it to produce an image. The problem here is that there are a lot of artists out there who are concerned that their art was used as part of a data set without their permission. That is very concerning that students and anybody be aware of that it's potential copyright issue. So much so that there's already been some not full out regulations, but some companies will not buy or sell any image created with an AI art generator unless the human also messed with the picture, so to speak. So if you create an image with Midjourney and then use Photoshop, then it's considered to be less theft or less copyright issue than others. As you can see, these things are really, we're at the beginning of this revolution. We still haven't figured this out. So I think at every step of the way, it's best to think about it. It's best to think about where is there a possible privacy issue here? Is there a possible ethical issue here? Is there a possible copyright issue? And continue to be on the lookout. Read your terms of service and anything that has to do with artificial intelligence. That one is actually easy. You just don't do it. You cannot use student personal information on anything on there. If you're going, if there are situations that you'd like to get help about a student's particular issues that you think ChatGPT or others may be able to help you, you just don't use that student's name. If you have a set of data that you'd like to input, that you'd like AI to analyze, you cannot use a student's name. You just do not. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. You just can't have student's name or anything that's identifiable. However, you can do the following: anonymize anything. So anonymize students' names. If you're going to, for example, let's say you have a spreadsheet that you'd like for any one of the various tools to help you with, and do not include the student's name. Do not include anything that has to do with your school. I wouldn't even include dates unless dates are important. You absolutely take out, just anonymize it fully. Names, dates, anything. Obviously, no identification ID numbers. None of those things. So that's actually kind of a simple one. Just don't do it. First, if we take a step back and remember what most of these tools are mostly built to do. Say, and let's stick with the most popular one being ChatGPT. ChatGPT is very good at analyzing certain things, analyzing certain data that you give to it, certain qualitative data that you give to it. And it does so by having learned off of other research, having learned off of other language. It tends to be very predictive, meaning that it looks at something and then kind of predicts what this would mean, what this means. It's not always necessarily great original thought. Even there's no thought behind it. It creates this. It does this predictive analysis, and that's just a nerdy way of saying that it's not necessarily original thoughts that come out. It's not original what comes out of there, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid. So, having said that, let's take a look at one way that it can help you. So let's say that you have a set of surveys that you gave to students, or that you gave to parents, or that you gave to your staff. And typically, if you have, say, a lot of surveys like this, there is a traditional way that you take and you analyze this by doing certain kinds of analysis around keywords, and it can be very daunting. But we also know that this kind of qualitative analysis, this analysis of surveys, is also can give you lots of great data, because it's when you give a survey to somebody where they have to answer, yes, likely, not likely, most likely, or not likely at all, or always, all of those, that it's limited, it's limited to those answers. So there's always been this tension, which is best. Well, what's really great about ChatGPT is you can dump in the data, the responses, the actual responses to open-ended surveys or open-ended questions, and it will analyze those. You can do this, and it does a fairly good job of it. That is something that you have to take. What you have to take into consideration is you have to anonymize. If you're going to do that, you have to be careful to anonymize anything on there. That there are no names. There's nothing about a school attached. That there's nothing that is in there that can identify what is you need either the student or your school or anything of that nature. It's worth doing. You can also make sure that that does not keep the data in the servers, to make sure that everything is it's very protected, but it does a good job. And there are, as I'm sure you're going to learn in this session, and also through some of the resources, there are ways to ask the questions. So if you ask ChatGPT to analyze, you say something to the effect of, from the perspective of a school administrator, please analyze these open-ended questions that were given to 100 participants. And you can even ask it to give it to you in specific, to give you key analysis where there are what were some of the topics that were most mentioned, and then you can ask it to do an equity analysis based off of these things, and then it will give you a very good analysis off of this. We've experimented with this and tried it out, and it does a good job, and it does it very quickly. It would take in the past days. It does in under a minute. So I think that's one way to do it, but again, with a caution that you must absolutely anonymize everything if you're going to do this, and also tell the people who this is, the people that you gave the survey to, the questions to, that this is going to be analyzed using artificial intelligence, and to assist you with that. Everything should be transparent. It can also analyze just regular old survey data that has on a scale that's that has a 1 to 5 scale. It can analyze that fairly well as too. There's a lot that it can do for your research. Educators really need to take a step in the direction of having students use it, but be very transparent and set up processes. You have to let them know what are the ethical ways of using using an artificial intelligence tool, and you cannot. I don't think we're going to be at the point where we close our eyes and say, the students aren't going to be using this, and we're just going to trust that they're not. I think that students are going to be using this. Some will probably be using it just to help them along, and some of them will be using it to maybe try not to do some of the work. So I think it's important that we start early and tell them, this is a tool, this is just another tool, and we're going to show you how to use this. If we just close our eyes and pretend like the students are going to do it, it's going to be to our disadvantage and to their disadvantage, because they're not going to learn how to use it properly. There are several things to think about in each one of our subject areas. So in math, there are some, it's fantastic. You can feed it an equation and ask it to walk you through step by step how to solve the equation. And that is a fantastic learning tool for our students. One of the great things about ChatGPT, for example, is that once it does that, you can ask it to email you the script of everything that you did, of everything that you asked, and all the questions that you asked. So if you can, I recommend that if you're going to ask students, if you're going to have students use ChatGPT, to make sure that they attach that, so that they attach something like that, so you can actually see the thought process that they did behind maybe solving a problem or getting assistance to solve a problem. Similarly, there are ways that you can use it in English and English language arts if you have students who are struggling with certain grammar concepts, and they cut and paste their own particular language in there and ask it to improve it and tell them how and why they improved it. That's a really great way to use AI. Again, ask for the proof of how they did this by asking them to click on there, so they can show you the process that they used, the questions that they asked. So it becomes even kind of a metacognitive exercise, to where you're seeing how they're thinking in order to get an answer from the tool. Another thing to consider is you're going to use this tool such as ChatGPT for writing purposes in many different ways, to improve your writing, to improve grammatical structures. When you're in the classroom, have students do journal writing. Go back to regular old handwritten or journal writing on a regular basis from the beginning. That way, when you know that it's taking place, and you can see their progress from throughout the year. using regular journal writing. And also, so you know what their writing is like from the beginning of the year unassisted, so that you can actually tell when students are just not, going through a process and asking it to improve something or to write something without going through a process. So I think it's a way of engaging that we're going to use this in education. We have to teach students how to engage the tool, not just be afraid that they're going to ask something of the tool and that's that.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the Padlet. I want to show you a little bit about some of the resources we've gathered, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. And again, we're really trying to finish on time. But let's go ahead and let me show you this Padlet. What we've done is we've created different sections on this Padlet. So there's lessons and activities. We have a presentation on what is prompt engineering and how prompt engineering impacts your results. So we even have a ChatGPT prompt cheat sheet that can kind of show you a little bit about how to interact with ChatGPT. We have lessons on digital citizenship, AI checkers. One of the things that we've heard a lot from teachers is that they're concerned about plagiarism. And Christina brought that up when she was talking a little bit about the ethical implications. But yeah, if you want to know if a human wrote it or if a machine wrote it, you can put the text into any of these AI detectors, and it'll give you a percentage of how much of the document was machine written and how much it was person written. So you can kind of alleviate some of your fears with that. We have some time-saving tips and tricks. So we have a bunch of apps that we've curated here, and as well as the presentation. But please, use this resource. If there's something that we should add to this resource, let us know. We want it to be a resource that you guys can use, as you explore and test out how AI can be used in your classroom or with your work. Let's see here. So I want to thank all of our presenters. I think Mr. Urbina might have already gone back to teaching his students. So I apologize that he's not here for our Q&A, but we have 5 minutes. So if you have any questions at all, please come off mute, raise your hand, turn on your camera. We're happy to answer them. And it looks like Molly has a question. So Molly, what's your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for all of you for this conversation. It's been super interesting from all your different perspectives. So my question is kind of like no wrong answers here, but if you had a crystal ball and Mr. Urbina's students are now in high school, how is their education experience different as teachers are starting to integrate AI more into their lesson planning? Students are learning to use it responsibly, and researchers are kind of responding back with their analysis. What is it like for those students in high school to be living in a world where AI is integrated throughout their experience?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I think, the immediate response is that for school districts, what we've seen is that school districts are blocking it right now. That is not to say that students can't use it at home and that students can't use it on their phones, but that's a response to the unknown, right? We don't know how it's going to behave. We don't know how students are going to interact with it, so we're just going to block it. As far as our students are concerned, in the world that they're growing up and they need to interact with it, I think about this from a digital inclusion standpoint. I feel that it's important to expose students to all the tools that they have access to in order to enhance their learning, supplement their learning, explore while they're learning. I don't feel that we should hide the tool or discourage the usage of the tool because we're worried about cheating. Students that have wanted to cheat have found ways throughout the millennia. I mean, I still think back and I don't know how many of y'all remember Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but they were like pasting the answers on the bottom of skulls, on their hands, on the bottom of their shoes. I mean, students have been figuring out ways to cheat forever. So it's not about cheating, but how can we enhance it? And so if we teach the students how to leverage the tool, how to brainstorm using the tool, how to get their ideas out of their head and onto a machine, then those are all benefits, I think. And then letting the students know we have AI checkers. We're going to run it through this AI checker and we'll see if you've been cheating. So transparency sometimes is a great deterrent. So that's just my perspective. Liz, what would you like
and I
to
think it's gonna just change how we're educating our students. I think VR and augmented reality is going to be so part of our learning experiences. I'm gonna learn how to drive using VR, AR, augmented reality technologies. They're gonna be like commonplace. They're gonna be just part of our everyday. My daughter, who's in a wheelchair, might be able to learn how to cook or do things that maybe she wouldn't have been able to do because she can't stand up. Or online learning is going to be part of how we all learn. I don't know what 10 years from now holds, but I feel like education is changing. The needs of our students right now are ever changing, and we have to keep up with that. There's lots of things that we're working on, being more flexible, having more interconnectedness between our lessons. It's not just my math lesson and my science lesson. How are we tying those in and having tools that are going to help us do that quickly and efficiently? That experiential learning is so important in our future job force. Our workforce need these tools for the future. And it's not just, can they add 2 + 2 or do they know this word in English, right? It's going to be light years from what we're seeing right now. So I think AI is just going with the flow of our students and what we need to do for them.
Thank you, Liz. Paula, Dr. Johnson, you had a question? I mean, not a question, a comment?
Yes, and first I want to piggyback on what Dr. Liz just said. As far as thinking, when you think about that example you just gave, is like, learning mathematics, AI could help actually tutor our children. You think about that. My comment, though, was something that years ago, I know all of us here, I think that I know, we were so excited about Canva and all of because, all the graphic design and everything we could do. Did you know that it now has the magic box? Have you seen? I mean, that was amazing. And if you haven't used it yet, Molly gotta go use it. Jared gotta go use it. Where I typed in some information about, we were doing a leadership training and I wanted to talk about equity and I wanted to talk about adaptive leadership. And it more than just like, I'm pretty verbal, like I'm very verbose. I write all the time. But what I liked about it is that it pulled in pictures and graphics and did some organization for me that some people are not very skilled at. So it's not just about the verbiage that it spits out, but also collecting ideas. Like it put what I was thinking into imagery. I mean, that's phenomenal. So it's not just like, I know, Michelle, I think about it all the time because I do still teach. But I teach math and it's kind of hard to use ChatGPT to do a math problem because they have to go through a different platform. But when they do their presentations, not everyone is skilled at things like that. So AI is also helping people present their thinking and give imagery to what they're trying to communicate that they might not know to go into Adobe stock photos and, find something like that or use their Microsoft Office. So it's really pulling together how we present information in a way that has just never been done before. And I think that's remarkable.
It is remarkable. And I think you actually just drove the point home. I mean, we're already using it in our work, right? We're already leveraging it as a tool in so many different ways. It's important to expose the students to these tools because this is their future, you know, and that goes back to Molly's question, you know, I mean, this is something that they're going to have to get used to it, just like they're used to the internet. It's, you know, AI is here to stay. It's not going to get, the genie is out of the bottle. There's no putting it back. So let's really learn how to expose them in a responsible way, just like Dr. Johnson said, so that they can incorporate it into their education or educational career as well as their professional career. Okay, we're at time. We're actually a little over. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. This will be available as a recording. We'll actually add the recording to the Padlet. So you'll have all the resources, the presentations, the resources that we're sharing, as well as the video. Everything will be on the Padlet. And we'll also email it after the session is over to everyone that registered and participated. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and have fun. Don't be scared of the AI. It is your friend. Well, for now, we don't know. It might take over later. I don't know.
Can it cook?
All right.
I'm in if it could cook.
Everyone.
Thank you.